storytelling guild. So I guess that's much better. So we're gonna have some fun tonight. We have a couple things. The microphone, if you're gonna talk into it, obviously you want to be close. If you stand back here, we're not going to hear you. Okay? So just get right up on it. You don't need to swallow it or anything. But you want to be close enough that we can hear you. Okay? We can adjust it for your height. If you decide you really want to hold it, we can do that too. We'll do that too. If you really, really need to hold it, if you're like deeply indebted to like having something to grab onto. But so anyway,
if you don't want to use the mic,
then we don't.
Oh.
You can probably hear me in the back if I wanted you to hear me without the microphone. But it's a long history. In fact, I was going to tell people that. For people who don't know me, I've been in theater for a long time. I started back in 1977.
I saw you on Star Trek.
Yes, I was hanging on to Kirk. They called me a Klingon. And so I've been doing theater a long time. And one of the things I've sung with a Gilbert and Sullivan operetta troupe. So if you want to hear me, you will hear me. And one of the things that I've done, many of the things that I've done, I've actually performed on Broadway. I've done 6 shows on Broadway. I've done South Pacific and Brigadoon and all that. And they're like, you're full of, we can't say that, can we? You're full of stuff here. No, actually, this is true. Well, all I had to do was go outside to smell the fertilizer. My God, it's spring in Washington County.
No, man, that's just my cologne.
Oh, I'm sorry. No, we had a fire drill at work today. We walked out and we're like, oh, God, it smells out here. But I've done things like South Pacific and Brigadoon on Broadway. I'm from Baltimore. I don't know if anybody's is from Baltimore or been to Baltimore, but there's an area of Baltimore, yes, called Fells Point, and there's a great big wide road there. Fells Point. What's the big wide street there?
Broadway.
Thank you. I've been on Broadway. Yes, I have. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Except when we went to see Cinderella up in New York a few years ago, we got a tour, a backstage tour, and we got to stand on a Broadway stage. And yes, I did dance on a Broadway stage. They told me to get loud afterwards, but I did. That was my fun. So we are going to pick names out of a hat. And if your name is chosen, please come up. You'll have 7 minutes on the timer. I can see the timer right there. And then we have somebody here who's going to give you a 1-minute warning. So you have to look over there to find out how much time you have, and then look over here to see it. It'll be like a ping pong match. So, who's the first storyteller, Sasha?
You want to have somebody do it. No, you should. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
Okay, well, I'll pick it out. You want me to pick it up?
You take the hat and have somebody
okay.
that doesn't know us.
I'll pick the first one.
There you go.
I volunteer.
You can pick all 5 of them, one at a time, and announce names, and then we'll know order.
You were going to announce. I was going to.
Well, I'm going to like Fanny. Fanny, you're first.
Who's the next 4, please?
Oh, in order?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going.
So we have
We're going to do them in order, okay.
Set the bar high. Okay, here. Here.
That's me, Mike. Wow. Yes, it's ladies' night.
You could read the names out.
I will. Good on it. I'm going to read them in order.
Brandon, he chose that last one.
All right, in order, we're going to have Fanny, then Julia, then Sonya, then Mark, and then Stas. So, are you ready, Fanny? Come on up. Well, I want to adjust the mic to make sure that it's working well for you. Oh, you're fine.
Testing. Wait.
Well, that was a short story.
Thank you so much.
The word for the day is nesting.
2019 is the start of the second decade of my membership in an international health organization called TOPS, Take Off Pounds Sensibly, TOPS. When I started with this organization, there were 30 pounds more to me than you see tonight. 2019 is also the third time that I have reached my TOPS goal, my target weight. But if I'm going to maintain that target this time, instead of backsliding, it's probably necessary for me to expose my membership in the dark side. A sister organization called Take Off Pounds Ostensibly. Now that's a big $25 fat fancy word, ostensibly. The dictionary says it means to appear real or genuine, but actually to be in doubt. I have spent 10 years ensuring that I never lose more than 0.2 of a pound each week at weigh-in. So, you know, the first 20 or so pounds I took off a while ago, but some of you know it's the last 5 to 10 that's the hardest. So I think there may be some of you out there who are also members of this dark side. And I'm going to share with you the 3 basic membership requirements in Take Off Pounds Ostensibly. T-O-P-O, TOPO. That word, ostensibly, begins with an O. So TOPO rule number 1. Be outrageous in defense of the old you. For 10 years, I have made sure that the first 5 days of every week before weigh-in, I eat everything. Pasta with cream sauce, lasagna, pizza, cream pies, macaroni and cheese, double servings, chocolate, and no exercise. The only exercise I get the first 5 days is opening the refrigerator door and lifting that gigantic industrial size ladle that I use to fill my trough. And forget meal times, I am eating every 2 hours. Then comes the last 48 hours before weigh-in. Top O rule number 2. Suit up and suit down the last 48 hours before weigh-in. The day before I weigh in, I go to my closet and my dresser drawers. You can do the same. Put on every stitch of clothing that you own. 7 pairs of socks, 7 pairs of underpants, leg warmers, flannel PJs, wool pants, gloves, scarf, hat, 3 turtlenecks, a fleece vest, and an overcoat. If it's hot and sunny outside, great, go out and bake in the sun. If it's cold outside, go to the warmest room in your house, turn on a heat source, and get as close as you can. Forget exercise, you don't need that. You're going to sweat off that 0.2 of ostensible pound. Then, the day before, or the day of weigh-in, take it all off. Now, you're going to suit down. You may be perfectly comfortable weighing in your nothing but your birthday suit in the privacy of your own home, whatever room your scale is in. But at Take Off Pounds Sensibly, the parent organization, we have guidelines for decorum in the weight room. So you're going to have to be creative. Now, like every other woman of my generation, I know how to take off 0.2 of a pound without disturbing my outer garments. And so, you too can learn how to disrobe with decorum. I don't know about you kids, but I have become a master of the underpants shimmy in the weight room. Now, finally, the day of weigh-in, taco rule number 3, ostensibly ends in a Y, so yogurt and smoothie. The last day, I take a quart-sized container of plain, no-fat yogurt. Doesn't need to be Greek, as long as it's no-fat and plain. And then I make myself a giant smoothie in my blender. Now this week, my smoothie was blueberries, apples, kale, and radishes. I see some wrinkled noses. Oh, you think I'm going to eat that stuff? No, I'm using that for arm weights. Because as I'm driving to weigh in on that last day, it's your large muscles, you know, that use the most calories. So as I'm driving to go weigh in, my right foot is on the gas pedal, so my left thigh is doing leg lifts. And when I get to the light, then my left foot is on the brake and my right thigh is doing leg lifts. I can probably do 100 while I'm waiting for the light to change. And since I only need one hand on the steering wheel, I can lift that 2 pints a pound, 2 pints and a quart, that yogurt container, or if I'm feeling a little subpar, I just go to the 1 pound smoothie. You too can be a member of Takeoff Pounds, ostensibly.
Congratulations for losing 30 pounds. You can have them back now. I found them for you. I've never been more frightened in my life. I was like, this is a family show. If I can't say shit, you can't take your clothes off. So, next up, Julia, by the way, remember, there's a 7-minute limit. There's going to be a winner, but Stas tells me that if you want to get the money, you have to be under 7 minutes. So, anybody could win, but you won't win money if you're not under 7 minutes.
How about a love story? How about a love story with some magic? When I was in my 20s, I knew everything there was to know. And I don't know about the rest of you, but the older I got, the dumber I got. And this morning, I swear I was dumber than I was when I woke up yesterday morning. But when I was in my 20s, I knew everything. And I still lived at home with my parents, and kind of wanted to share my knowledge and philosophy and the way I felt about life with a true love, and hadn't found anyone that was qualified for that yet. So we had a thing that we did in our family. We would go on just day trips, my dad, my mom, my sister, and we liked to go to this bookstore down in Front Royal, Virginia. It was a used bookstore, and it was amazing. It had old books stacked everywhere, and it had a huge New Age section, which is what I was really into back at that time. And my favorite part about it was that the doorway over the fiction section had a sign that said, "Shoplifters, remember your karma." And I thought, that's just so clever. You know, this is the bookstore for me. Everybody here is just as smart as me, and I'm going to come here and I'm going to learn things. So I found myself in the New Age section one day in the spring, and I was just browsing around through there, and I looked up above me, and there was a shelf of New Age books, astrology, crystals, things like that. And I saw this little slim volume, a white book with a spine that the letters were written in purple. It said, "Love spells for the disenchanted." And I thought, well, that could be me. I could be disenchanted about love. I do know a lot of things. So I was reaching up to grab the book, and it was wedged very tightly on the shelf. And I pulled on it, and as I did, it came loose, but something else came forward and hit me on the head. And it was a sharp plastic corner of something I could feel. It hit me on the head and landed on the floor. I was a little frustrated, so I looked down at it, and it wasn't a book at all. It was an old VHS copy of a movie. I picked it up, and it was National Lampoon's Animal House. And I thought, what is this doing here? This is the New Age section. I like this movie, but there's nothing serious and philosophical and magical about Animal House. So I chucked it over my shoulder, and I bought the book, and I went home. Got home, I started looking through the spells, and there were spells for everything. There were spells for revenge. There were spells for inappropriate mother-in-laws. But the third spell that I saw was the one that I really was interested in, and it said, "How to find your true love by signs in only 3 days." And I thought, this is the one. This is the one I'm going to look for. Only 25 simple steps and some things from around your house and a night of the new moon, and you are going to meet your true love in 3 days. So I decided to give it a try. And on the night of the new moon, I had everything that I needed. I had elements, or representatives for every element on earth. I had candles for fire, I had salt for earth, I had water for water, a bowl of water actually with a crystal lodged in it, and then I had incense for air. Now, when you are casting a spell, the most important part is to have that circle drawn. And once you draw that circle, you can't go outside of it for any reason, and you can't let anything come in, because who knows what you're going to attract, right? So I drew my circle. I had everything together, and then I looked when it was time to light the candles, and there were the matches on the outside of the circle. This isn't good. This is, who knows what's going to happen. So I disassembled the circle. I went all around. I said the chant, hallelujah, all that. Grabbed the matches, lit the candle, reassigned the circle, lit the candle, started again. It went on like this through the first 14 steps. I would go forward, make a mistake, something would happen, and I would have to start over. Well, by step 23, things had really started to reach their apex, and I held that bottle or bowl of water up above my head, and I started to chant, and I really had the spirit. It was great. I was going and going and going, and then I felt that crystal kind of lodge in that water, and the next thing I knew, it spilled out all over the floor. It put the candles out, and there was a mess all over my carpet. And then it kind of came to me. I said, what am I doing? I'm in my 20s, and I know a lot of things. I'm so smart. What am I doing? Even out here trying to cast a spell to find somebody to fall in love with me? I don't need this, and this is embarrassing. So I swept everything under the bed, dusted off my hands, and then went on my way. 3 days later, it was time for me to go to work, and I worked in the German restaurant downtown, the Schrankelstube. I was a waitress there, and it was a really slow night. I only had 3 tables, and so our boss said, you can have off for the evening. So I sat down at the bar to have a after work drink, and I have a really bad habit of listening in on conversations that happen next to me, and I heard these 2 men talking at the end of the bar, and I thought, well, it sounds like they're talking about is kind of familiar. I heard one of them say something about, yeah, that movie's really funny. I like it too, and I started to get a little bit sweaty, and I thought, maybe this beer has hit me funny, I don't know. And I heard his voice again, and he said, my favorite line from that movie is when the college boys walk up, or the boys in the club walk up, and they say to these college kids, do you boys mind if we dance with your dates? And I thought, oh, wow, that's a line from Animal House. I really like that movie. And so I looked up, And there was a person standing at the end of the bar who happened to have, which I forgot to mention earlier, he had at least 2 of the 3 attributes that I had insisted upon when I set my spell out. I had 3. The first one was he must have a job. The second one was he had to be handsome, because I was in my 20s, you know, and if you're kind and considerate, that's just gravy, right? When you're in your 20s, your man's got to be good looking, or your spouse. And the third one was, will he make me sweat? I was sweating, and I looked over, and I said, hey, you know, I like Animal House too. That's my favorite movie. And my favorite line of that movie is also when those guys come over and say, hey, do you mind if we dance with your dates? So I stood up, and I wiped my hands on my legs, and I walked over to him, and I said, do you have a job?
All right. And to the judges, no pressure, but she did have a skill for revenge in that book, too.
Okay. That's what I was afraid of. Saw the light blinking while she was talking. It's already up. Talk amongst yourselves. Fortunately, I come prepared. Sonya is next, but she's going to have to wait till I get a battery in here. Sonya doesn't need a microphone. Sonya. Come on, let's make us proud. Thank God you had extra batteries. When you have wireless stuff, you always carry extra batteries. You learn that the hard way. Maybe not. Oh, I know.
There we go. Just had to reset it. This is tighter than Fanny's 7 pairs of drawers. There we go. All right, you ready? Next up, Sonya.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. This tale is Karma is a Feisty Dog. So, this has been the year from hell. Actually, maybe the last year and a half. And in January, I lost my partner. And now I've lost the car, and soon it's going to be the house. So I'm in the middle of downsizing. Like, have you seen How Do You Shrink the Kids? Yeah, no. This is 2 households and a large storage unit. And the clock's ticking. So, my best friend John has been helping me. And yesterday we didn't quite make as much progress. So today he decided to use, I guess we should call it tough love. And he got a little carried away. And I ended up crying. But made it through. So, you know, John was in the Marines before, and today he was like a drill sergeant. And his idea is like, burn it all! Or Goodwill. And so, you know, my dog, I've got this dog, her name's Marlena. She's a Corgi Husky Healer mix. And, hello? Okay, I'll just speak loud.
Now it's the day from hell.
Hey, timer! Pause.
Maybe they're gonna go out too. I'm really sorry. I don't know. I should have changed the other ones at the same time. Sounds really good.
Oh yeah.
It's good to have a friend.
Did you stop the clock?
Pause now.
Yeah, but it was 5:41 when the mic went.
You get 3 more seconds.
Every second counts.
Three more tigers on the farm.
This is getting as good as basketball.
You're back.
And I'm back. Okay. So, he's out at the barn, and he's bringing up this box of Christmas decorations for me to sort through, figure out what to keep, what to get rid of, and of course he's like, get rid of it all. Well, I have this dog named Marlena, who's this Husky Heeler mix, and she's mama's girl, so she's seen the earlier part of the day unfold. So he's coming up, he's at the back of the yard by the barn, and she just kind of slips in behind him. Nip, right on the butt. So needless to say, John yelps, swings around, because it's like, what the hell is going on? Well, so he's back at the barn by the chicken coop and everything, and you can see it coming. He loses his balance, falls backwards. There it is, little door, a chicken coop. So like as I mentioned, John was a former Marine, and when he was stationed overseas, it was like, stay away from farm fresh eggs. They'll kill you. They're dangerous. So he hits this door, goes right in. Kind of didn't get the chicken coop clean that morning, or maybe the morning before that. But it's extra padding, right? So he's okay. But one of the hens is a late layer. So she's in the coop. And she's freaking out. And she's squawking and she's like looking for the door. But the problem is, his head is in between her and the door. And he's like seeing this chicken. He's like, this thing's gonna peck my eyes out. So in the midst of, never heard anybody scream quite like that before, but in the midst of him trying to get himself up and out of this chicken coop and avoid the chicken, the box of Christmas decorations is like, whee, fly be free. Christmas decorations flying down everywhere. So, you know, we managed to get him out of there and cleaned up and boarded up the chicken coop and everything, and it's all good. But after that experience, and he didn't need stitches, but he was not quite himself once we got the chicken coop out of the hair and everything. So that's why he wasn't able to, you know, present this evening. But just wanted to let y'all know that, you know, he's okay, and he's still looking to get that, that registration fee from the first Liars Club. He didn't get that back. He was down in Texas helping me get the storage unit up here. So, that's my tale. Just remember, try and lead with kindness, because karma is a feisty dog and sometimes she bites.
Lesson number 2, never call a Marine a chicken shit. All right. Now we have Mark up. No, he didn't leave. He's just bringing a chair.
Are we tired?
Retired, just laying.
Just laying. Go step on yours.
Chuck,
Yes.
will you pick up that
Stick.
and put it someplace safe?
No, take it.
He said someplace safe.
Test.
Is that close enough for you when I'm over?
How's this?
There you go.
This is good. In 1975, I wrote a poem that won poetry contests for 25 straight years. I was 17 then, and I'd taken a literature and poetry class, and I had an assignment to write a poem. So I went to Washington County Library that night. In about 10 minutes, I wrote what I thought was a pretty good poem, but I wasn't sure. I was sitting there kind of basking in the success of what had happened when one of my classmates walked by. He looked over my shoulder and he said, "No, that's all wrong." He said, "You got to change this and you got to change that. Switch this word," it was ocean, "and make it sea." Well, That fellow's name is Mudflap, and Mudflap is a guy that I still know to this day. He's a Sharpsburg guy. And Mudflap is a rude and obnoxious person. There is no second to Mudflap in those categories. Mudflap, I think, invented internet trolling. He's out there somewhere. And Mudflap enjoys a pastime, conversational one, that he calls, "I'm right and you're stupid." So look out for Mudflap. Well, I looked at the suggestions Mudflap made, and he had passed away or left me there to ponder those. I looked at the paper, and I thought he's probably right, so I made the change. And here's the poem, the way it came out. Does anybody want to hear it?
Yes.
Good. It goes this way. It goes, "By the sea I saw a man standing at the foot of the tide. He projected his eyes into a thin waxen moon, and he waited for death. I asked him, 'What did you lack?' And he answered, 'I merely wanted, to see what everyone has seen, and to think what no one else has thought.'" Well, I took that poem to school the next day, and I entered it in the school newspaper poetry contest, and lo and behold, it won first place. And they took that poem and they posted it outside the main office, and it stayed there on a bulletin board until the end of the school year. And on the last day of the school year, when I passed by that bulletin board, that poem was gone. And I suspected Mudflap had taken that down. Didn't matter too much. I went to Hagerstown Junior College the next year, and I submitted that poem in a poetry contest, and lo and behold, it won again. And the following year, I transferred to Towson University, and I entered it in a poetry contest, and it won again. And I kept submitting this poem to poetry contests, and it kept winning for the next 22 years. About 20 years ago, Julia and I were together at this time, and Julia decided she was going to enter a poetry contest, and she said, "Why don't you too?" And I thought, well, that's a grand idea. I've got something that I think will work. And I brought out the old poem again and submitted it, and we both waited anxiously, and about 2 weeks later, I came home from work, and there was a message on the answering machine. I picked it up, and I started to listen. It said, "Congratulations, you are the winner of the poetry contest in the adult division. Julia, we would like to invite you to come speak and read your poem." And so I was defeated. The poem had lost its streak, so I retired the poem officially as of that date. About 2 months ago, the town of Sharpsburg announced that through a grant from the National Poetry Foundation, it was seeking a person to fill the role of Poet Laureate of Sharpsburg. Being in love with the culture of Sharpsburg and the history, I decided I would submit a poem. Of course, I needed something new, so I wrote a completely new poem. I wrote about the beauty of Sharpsburg. I wrote about the Antietam Creek, the Potomac River, the Big Spring. And just so I wasn't overly joyous or romantic, I threw in some references to the blood and gore of the streets here in Sharpsburg during the battle, and I sent that poem off, and I got a letter back about 2 weeks later that invited me to come to a town council meeting where I expected I would be crowned Poet Laureate of Sharpsburg. Now, some of you might know Sharpsburg's handling some rather sensitive political hot potatoes right now, and I went to a meeting that night, and there the room was full of angry people. Fortunately, on the agenda, first item was Poet Laureate of Sharpsburg, and the mayor quickly announced that he would like the people who were candidates for this opportunity to come forward. Well, I was surprised that there were candidates, but I stepped forward, and soon another body stood next to me, and that person was Mudflap. And they told us we would each have 5 minutes to write a poem, because the poems we'd submitted were good, but they couldn't decide between them. So they put us in separate rooms, they rang a bell, they gave us 5 minutes to write. I did not know what to write. And then an idea came to me. I remembered Walt Whitman's poem, "I Hear America Singing, Its Varied Carols I Hear." And I decided that all I needed to do was take the references from that poem out to America and insert Sharpsburg, and I would have a winning poem. And I did. That's what I did. So they took us both, when the time was up, they took us back before the town council, and Mudflap generously offered to let me go first to read my poem, and so I started out. "I hear Sharpsburg singing its very carols I hear," and from the back of the room, someone screamed, "That's Walt Whitman." Another person screamed, "Plagiarizer." Someone else shouted, "Get him out of here!" And I slunk out of the room. But there I stood at the doorway, And the next thing I knew, I heard Mudflap start to read his poem. By the sea, I saw a man standing at the foot of the tide. He had stolen my poem, but there was nothing I could do. I couldn't go back into the room of angry people, so I slithered across the street over to Bender's Tavern, and I sat at the bar and I had a beer. And it wasn't too long before Mudflap creased the doorway, and I glared at him and I shook my finger and I said, "You've stolen my poem." And he said, "There's no way, you can't steal something that you actually worked on." And I said, "Mudflap, how did you do it?" I said, "Did you take that poem from the school?" He said, "No, I wouldn't do that." He said, "When they put me alone in that room, I knew you were an over-poster on Facebook, and you had all kinds of poetry on there. I just looked up 2 that you had, and when the time came, I let you go first, so I knew which one you were going to pick, and then I read the other one." And that's how Mudflap became Poet Laureate of Sharpsburg. Thank you.
Alrighty then, we have one last contestant. You know, Mark, I read that story in Reader's Digest last month. I'm just saying. It was shorter though. So, Stas is our last contestant. Please give it up for Stas.
1999 in December, my wife Terry and I decided that we would greet the new year, the change to the new millennium, by going on a short vacation. We're both teachers and we had a winter break. And about a week before we decided on this, where we were going to go, she got a phone call and a person requesting that she play for a wedding. Well, for many years in the Frederick area, Terry was the best-known wedding harpist and vocalist. And so she said, "Sure, I'll play for your wedding. When is it?" And she was taking notes on details. And all of a sudden she stopped and said, "I'm sorry, we'll be out of town that day." And the guy said something else to her, and she covered the phone a minute, and she said, "What am I going to do? He wants New Year's Eve." We were scheduled to be in Virginia on New Year's Eve, not coming home till the next day. I said, "Give him an outrageous price. Say $1,000. And she said, $1,000 for that day. She said, "Okay." So she had a job for New Year's Eve. Apparently this was a military man and he wanted to get married at the stroke of midnight on New Year's Eve when the new millennium came in. So we decided to cut our vacation short by a day. On the day that we came back to Frederick, we had a number of different things to do. One thing we wanted to do was get down to Baltimore to see some of my family. And on the way back, there was a terrible accident on Route 70. We were in a parking lot on Route 70 for about 2.5 hours. It messed up our schedule so bad that we actually wound up getting back to our condo in Frederick at about 11 o'clock. So we got back to the condo. I said, "Terry, you go ahead, get dressed in your finery for the wedding. I'll pack up the harp, put it in the van, and we'll be ready to go." Unfortunately, while we were away, I had been doing some things with my flash ring and my magic wand. I do some theater, same theater he was in, actually, once. And the magic wand I had used flash paper. Roll it, the paper, stick it in the wand, there's a little button, and when you do this with it, it'll shoot flame 20 feet across the stage. It was a lot of fun. So I had the harp covered in its cover, took it out to the van, put the harp in the van on top of my suitcase. Got out, was starting towards the house when Richard, a neighbor, who sat outside almost every night, and this night was special, said, "I think there's something wrong in the van." So what do you mean? I went back to the back of the van, opened the door, it was full of smoke. It was then it dawned on me that I had let that magic wand loaded in my suitcase with a pack of the flash paper. Smoke was pouring around the suitcase. So I quickly dragged the suitcase out from under the heart, took the heart, set it outside the van, and at the edge of the van, I unzipped the suitcase. I shouldn't have done that, because as soon as I lifted it top up, the entire thing erupted in flames. I had to run to the back of the van, grab my fire extinguisher, put out the fire, made a terrible mess in the van, dropped the suitcase onto the ground, turned around, and as I turned around and looked, I realized that I had parked right where someone had broken a couple of bottles. I had a flat tire. My right front tire was flat. So I thought, even if I change that tire, the van's scorched. I don't want to put the heart back in that thing. Richard had just purchased a brand new cargo van. I went over to him and said, Richard, I need your help. Can I use your van? Richard was not a generous guy, but I explained as quickly as I could. Terry has to go to Dutch's daughter. She's going to play for a wedding. It's really important. It's going to make her a lot of money, and we have to be there at 20 of 12 for her to begin playing. And so he said, okay. And he said, should I cancel the call to the fire department? Yes, please. So I loaded the heart into that cargo van, and we headed out to Dutch's daughter. It was only about 7-8 minutes drive from our condo. We had maybe a block to go when I noticed the red and blue lights behind us. The policeman pulled us over. He asked me, I rolled down the window, I said, officer, what's wrong? He said, you were going a little bit fast. I knew I was going fast because Terry had been yelling at me, you're going too fast. And so I said, wait, we're in a big hurry. I have to get to Dutch's daughter. My wife is playing for a wedding at midnight. And he said, there's something else wrong. I said, what's that? He said, the tags on this van are out of date. Is this your van? I said, no, it belongs to Richard. And he said, Richard who? I said, I don't know his last name. Just then, the door to the cruiser, the passenger door, opened up, and a friend of mine stepped out. Hugh Gordon, who rode with the police every New Year's Eve for 30-some years. Hey, Stash, what's up? I explained it all to him as quickly as I could. The policeman said, I'm sorry, you cannot drive the van any further, it's got to stay here. However, we were able to talk him into, I could take the heart down. Terry went down to the restaurant, I put the heart on the dolly, rolled it down, set it up. The wedding went perfectly. Terry earned her $1,000, and the groom came to me at the end of the evening and said, Y2K, ha! Nothing happened at all.
Alrighty there, we have our 5 contestants. The judges are scribbling furiously, and we should know something shortly. So, I know the draft is going on. Unfortunately, since I was here, I missed what I wanted to see, was to see if that guy won Jeopardy again. Of course he did, I'm sure he did. He's won, what, $1.3 million? Oh, he's up to 1.6 now?
And he's a gambler.
And he is, well, he certainly is.
Professional gambler.
Well, it's funny, when they're looking for a replacement, because unfortunately, well, Alex Trebek, other than having cancer, also is getting up there in years, and he's got to end of his contract, so they're looking for a replacement. I said, who do you think should replace him? I said, me. I read trivia, me. Yeah.
You don't have experience, and I do.
I read trivia every week.
Years of experience running that kind of trivia contest for Frederick County schools. Years and years.
Not a chance.
It didn't help any.
So, do we have a winner? So there's no second or first place. Okay. So you have a winner. Looks like unanimous. The winner tonight is, with his story of the Poet Laureate, Mark. And I think you beat the time. I think you were under 7 minutes, weren't you? So we want to thank you all for coming. We had a good time tonight, I think. We're here every Monday night. There's trivia here every Monday night at Captain Bender's. So we have a lot of fun with that. And we encourage you to come and play trivia and hang out and have dinner and have some good times with us. The next meeting of PU,
The Liars Club.
the Liars Club. No, it's the Antietam Storytelling Guild. Will be
May 15th.
May 15th. So put it not here.
That's, our meeting is May 15th.
Oh, there's a meeting of the ASG on May 15th.
And it's at Michelle's house. That's 125 East Main Street.
It's in Hagerstown.
You know, karma's a dog that can bite you. I heard that somewhere tonight.
It's just a liar.
I don't put it past her, just. So, but we will have another one of these. So watch Facebook and the website for the next date of the Liars Club. Okay? Thank y'all for coming.
Hey, Mark, way to go.
Okay.
Everybody, attention, thank you. Thank you to Captain Bender's Tavern for allowing us to hold our second Liars Contest here tonight. Can everybody hear me okay? Thank you to Steve Kemet, who's here. Thank you to the staff for accommodating us, Campbell and the rest of the crew. Thank you to Dimitri for tearing down and setting up and making us feel so welcome. And we love it here and can't wait to be back. Everyone, I hope you had a good time tonight. And again, as Chuck said, stay tuned for more. We've got other dates coming up. Have a good night, everybody.